Hello, my name is Nurnisa Kurban. I am Uyghur living in Los Angeles. Today, I will share my personal experiences as an Uyghur American and the experiences of other Uyghurs who are struggling under the atrocities committed by Chinese government. I was born and raised in the beautiful city of Kashgar in East Turkestan. The Chinese government call it Xinjiang. That means new territory. I feel so blessed to call Kashgar my home for 18 years that I spent with my beloved mother who passed away, and my father who is turning 84 this year, my sister, my brothers, my relatives, and my friends. And I'm dreadful that I might not go back again, or even if I have a chance to go back, I don't know whether I would be able to find the traces of the memories that I have from my 18 years of life in Kashgar. Besides Kashgar as being my birthplace, it is a very special place for all Uyghurs because it holds our identity as an Uyghur, what it means to be Uyghur, and it keeps our history alive, it keeps our identity alive, and it's also a symbol of survival and struggle of every single Uyghur. I received my elementary and elementary through high school education in Kashgar. I went to bilingual schools with Uyghur students and teachers. Most of the subjects were taught in Uyghur, and we would have a Chinese language classes every day. Of course, the textbooks and the curriculum were vetted and approved by central government. Teachers were highly scrutinized and monitored, and so were students. There was no opportunity for me to learn the true history of my ancestors from the textbooks or any sources available. That's why Uyghur literature class that I took was one of my favorite subjects, because through learning the literature, including classic literature, I was able to connect to my past, to connect to my heritage and make sense and of who I am as a Uyghur. There was no opportunity for me to learn about Islam in any kind of religious schools. And only thing I know is through watching people, their behaviors, and what has been kept as a part of our culture. I graduated high school in 1992 and was accepted to Xinjiang University in Urumqi, a capital city of East Turkestan. Throughout my education, along with the typical academic work, I was also taught to love Chinese government, Chinese Communist Party, and taught to love China. I was taught to sing patriotic songs and swear that Han Chinese and minorities are inseparable. besides the propaganda that I was forced to believe, I saw Uyghurs and Han Chinese being separated for job opportunities and other opportunities. When I was at college, I witnessed that our Han Chinese classmates or schoolmates were offered jobs or advanced studies opportunities before they graduated college, whereas Uyghur and other minority college students in the same program with the same skills were struggling to find jobs. And in the 90s, I saw large influx of Han Chinese moving to areas in Kashgar through organized migration, urbanization, and the sake of development. Kashgar was primarily a Uyghur city, and Chinese government provided incentives such as free housing, loan for Han Chinese migrants, and encouraged them to settle, while the local Uyghurs were left behind. I came to the United States in 1997, right after I graduated college, to pursue my American dream, to pursue higher education, and to build my life here and the better life for my children as well. And I'm celebrating my 23rd anniversary of my arrival to the United States in July. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities that were given to me here in the United States. I became an American citizen in 2010, and I was able to go back home and visit my family and friends a few times with my children. Applying to Chinese visa was a little bit stress and hard for me and other Uyghurs as well. Every time I go to the Chinese consulate for a visa, I was asked to provide so many documentations, and they would tell me that they had to contact the local government in Kashgar, where my family lives, to make sure that my family has a good standing with the Chinese government. And I was frustrated, but I was okay because I was glad that at least I could go back and visit my family and provide the opportunity for my children to see where I was born and the life that I was exposed to. My father came to visit me in summer of 2016 for a few months and flew back in October. We made a plan that he would come back in spring of 2017, and I would take him back to Kashgar in the summer. 3 weeks after return from his visit from the United States, he told me on the phone that his passport was confiscated. Then rumor had it, it wasn't only my father, it was all the Uyghurs and other minority groups that were ordered to turn in their passports. In March of 2017, my older sister stopped taking my calls. before that, we were able to talk frequently. So I remember clearly that was on March 8th, and that was also an International Women's Day. So I called her to celebrate her holiday, and she didn't pick up. 20 minutes later, I was directed not to call my sister again, ever again. Since then, I haven't heard from her. It has been over 3 years now, or 1,151 days to be exact. While I try to wrap my mind around this sudden change, my friends and my family members disappeared from the WeChat app, one of the social media apps that was allowed in China. I was unfriended by everyone whom I had been in constant communication with. Then I heard it was happening to everyone I know, the Uyghurs that live in abroad, in the United States and other parts of the world. And up until February of this year, I was still able to occasionally hear my father's voice. I would answer the phone, or he would answer the phone when I called him. And it would be very quick, 30-second call that would be simple, hi and bye. And there's no more Allah Ramanet or God bless you or any of the phrases that he would never forget to say when I called him. There would be no room for me to ask any other questions because I know for a fact that he was very anxious to hang up the phone. Then comes my nightmare. News about millions of Uyghurs being sent to concentration camps. Children were taken away from their family members and placed in orphanages. People were forced to download the spyware so that the government can monitor. And I was heartbroken to see the pictures of men in concentration camps with jumpsuits, and the picture of the streets with cameras in every 5 feet. Then I made a connection, and I understood why all of a sudden my father would say anything on the phone. I was frightened. I was frightened because the map of one of the maps of concentration camps where they were located, I saw quite a few red spots around Kashgar. And then the list of crimes for qualifying you to be sent to concentration camps. Like, for example, having Islamic names, having family members in abroad, and having recently visited foreign countries or contacted someone overseas. Then I understood why I was suddenly disconnected from my loved ones, and obviously they didn't have a choice but to abandon me. Even if they were not in the camps, they're still living in open prison, apparently, where their every move is being monitored. So I understood. I understood. And then the streets were empty. The streets that I walked to school, and the picture of Idgar Mosque with empty space or filled with sea of soldiers. And that brought me some memories. And that is the picture on the top where people were praying. That is the scene that I saw growing up, especially on the last of Ramadan, Eid celebration, and then Kurban holiday. But it became more restricted in 2000, after 2000. And I believe when I went back home in 2014, that happened to be summer that also, that was a time for Ramadan. And I remember seeing very few people going to mosque because the government employees and teachers were not allowed to go to mosque. And during the Ramadan, the teachers and students were summoned to school and study Chinese Communist Party propaganda. And they were forced to eat lunch or breakfast so that they would make sure that teachers and students wouldn't fast or engage in any kind of religious activities. People were very cautious to talk to me because I came from the United States, and I wouldn't ask them any questions why. But since I grew up there and I noticed the change and the change in government's policies toward the religious practices of Uyghurs, and what hurt me the most was the day of Ramadan when my nephews and other relatives were asked to report to work in the morning so that they wouldn't go to mosque or they wouldn't celebrate Ramadan. Now, or since 2017, it wasn't the case. And even though some groups were prohibited from practicing religion, but you would still see some retired people or small business owners were able to practice some level of religion. But since 2017, it was completely forbidden. And I was told that the mosques were closed or some mosques were destroyed, and people were forced to drink alcohol or forced to eat pork to denounce their religion. Instead, they were asked to sing patriotic songs to express their loyalty. And when I look at the picture of Uyghur students or kids with Han Chinese clothes, I remembered what I noticed when I went back in 2014. As I mentioned earlier, at least I was able to enjoy bilingual education on some level besides the restrictions that was imposed upon me. Even when I went back in 2014, the bilingual education was gone, and teachers were forced to teach the subject in Chinese, or they were forced to retire. And the kids were not allowed to speak Uyghur. And that was very heartbreaking for me back in 2014. But the reports that were coming from East Turkestan and how those crimes are being committed, and looking at this picture, and I told myself, wow, they really stepped up. They didn't want us to keep our language and culture, and they forced everyone to be in the homogeneous propaganda. And now they're imposing the Han Chinese identity upon Uyghur students from the kindergarten. And those evidence clearly indicates their true purpose or goal, which is to eradicate us, not only our religion, but also our identity, who we are. The Chinese government denied the existence of camps. Then they said there were detention centers to eradicate Islamic extremism, or vocational schools. But the evidence that were leaked said otherwise. As you can see from these pictures, I recognize most of them because they were well-known scholars, educators, academics, singers, artists, athletes, writers. And I saw the picture of Senebar Tursun, well-known, beloved singer and composer. I saw Tremangle's picture, who is one of my favorite poets and also editor-in-chief of Kashgar Uyghur Publishing House, my hometown. And she was detained for editing a novel called Golden Slippers. And the author, Halida, is also in concentration camps. And I was heartbroken when I heard that Mohammed Salih, who is the Islamic scholar and the first person who translated Holy Quran into Uyghur language, was killed in concentration camps. And on the right side, you'll see that many educators or employees in education organizations were being detained in concentration camps. The testimonies of relatives who are detained in East Turkestan and the activism of Uyghurs overseas, and also the support that we got from different organizations and people who really care dearly about our cause, really made a difference in regards to raising awareness and bring that atrocities into an international platform. But the testimonies of relatives or activism, even in the free countries like United States and Europe, wasn't easy because Chinese government would use different strategies to intimidate and try to silence those who spoke up. For example, Roshan Abbas, well-known activist, she spoke at Hudson University in 2018. And a few days later, her sister, Dr. Gulshan, was taken away from her home. And she was believed to be detained in concentration camps. If you are avid listener of New York Times Daily podcast, you might came across with the story of Jawdat and his mother. And I remember that day because while I was listening, I had to stop and cry in my car for hours. His mother was detained several times and was released, and she was taken away again days after he and other Uyghurs met with US officials. And also reporters of news outlets like New York Times and Washington Post, and they constantly report how the Uyghurs overseas being threatened, intimidated by Chinese government for their activism. Especially the reporters from Radio Free Asia. Their families some of them were sent to concentration camps or intimidated because of their constant bravery and constant report and getting the information out from East Turkestan. So besides the intimidation and threat from Chinese government, Uyghurs and other organizations continue to fight and raise their voice through any platform they found. And we were touched and empowered by the support that we received from various sources and the bravery of Uyghurs and all over the world who came to fight and educate everyone and demand the international community to act and stop China from committing such atrocities. And as a result, the plight of Uyghurs have gotten international attention, and we're very pleased. And for example, US government openly condemned Chinese government, and there were several bills were introduced at the Senate level and congressional level and waiting to be consolidated. In California too, in Los Angeles, we have very few Uyghurs, few hundred of us. And when this all started to unfold, we were heartbroken and devastated, and we had to do something. Even that means locally in Los Angeles area. So we found ways to connect with people. For example, we got a booth at USC Book Festival of Books last year, and we were overwhelmed by the number of people who stopped at our booth, asked questions, and asked us how they can help, what they can do to help us. And organizations that we worked with, such as Jewish World Watch, UyghurLA, they worked with us tirelessly by organizing demonstrations and connecting with local officials, congressmen, and asking their support for the bill. And with that, I feel like we made a significant progress, but there's no tangible method or any kind of steps were taken to stop Chinese government. The Chinese government has not been held accountable yet. People are still looking for their loved ones. And for me, it has gotten worse. That 30-second phone call with my father was gone. I was told not to call him or anyone else. And there were news that the detainees from concentration camps were secretly moved to different parts of other provinces, used as forced labor. And a few weeks ago, the UN appointed China to a seat on Human Rights Council. So our fight has not over yet. Although the progress that we are making is slow, but I have a hope. I have a hope because I saw how much people care. There are so many people that they wanted to do the right thing to make sure that Chinese government will be held accountable for. Personally, as much as I'm hurt and heartbroken, I'm confident that our fight continues until we see justice. On a personal level, as an educator, I know how much power we have to change the world to a better place. During my 16 years as an educator, I have been lucky to work with passionate educators in public sector to educate our children and advocate for high quality education, regardless their backgrounds. And together we have defended democracy, freedom, equality, equity, and rights of every single student and their families. During my time at USC School of Education, I was given the opportunity to learn from classmates and professors who had dedicated their lives to fight for social justice inside and outside classroom. And they advocated for those who deserve a quality education. And this story of Uyghurs and story of mine is no different. And I'm confident and I'm hopeful that together we will be the voice of those millions of Uyghurs who are suffering. Please help me to be the voice Thank you.